right up there. Oh yeah? Where? Sorry. I thought there'd be a catch there.
Very male thing, holding up this.
Right, absolutely. I'm always challenged by this technology. I'm challenged by this one as well. How do I move on to the next one? Ah, there we go, got it. Right, well, thank you very much for letting me have an opportunity to talk to you. Having just listened to Bill, I wonder if all our problems are solved and there's nothing really we need to do. I'm not necessarily convinced that's true. I think the first thing that we need to think about is, well, I'll take issue with a few things he said, but basically, if we go back to the Digital Britain report and the other studies that have been undertaken, there, I think, a general acceptance that something like 2/3 of the country is probably going to get next generation access broadband delivered by the market. Economics will work, the market will work. What do we do about the other 30%, the other third, whatever the numbers are? And that's really what I'm going to focus on today. And I think it's very germane to Cumbria, because Cumbria is, as we've heard, very much in the last third. That's the Borders and the, sorry, Penrith and the Border constituent. I always put an S on the end of Borders. I don't know why. There is only one border, but it sort of somehow rolls off the tongue with an S. And I mean, that's just a recap of the challenge we've got. It's a big area, small population, and it's going to be very, very difficult to actually make a business case to deliver next generation access into most of that area. And the thing I would actually say is, again, I'm not sure I agree with some of the previous speakers. I do believe that technology matters, and I do believe speeds matter, because we're going to get one bite at this cherry, and I think we've got to actually put in networks that give us some headroom. I don't think there's any point in trying to go for a short-term solution using public funding or anything else, which will satisfy us for a year or two, and then are going to cause all sorts of problems later. At the end of the day, we really need to start thinking about what our next generation applications and how much bandwidth they're going to need. And I quite accept we don't know what they are. I'm one of the black belts that Rory referred to earlier that waves his hands in the air and says there are going to be all sorts of exciting challenges and we need to be ready to deliver them. At the moment, if you're in Cumbria and you take broadband, it's going to be delivered from one of 38 telephone exchanges, which are in the middle of those green blobs. And those green blobs are really reinforcing what Adrian said this morning. Those are idealised circles of 2 megabit delivery, which we know don't actually match because the copper doesn't go in nice straight lines, it zigzags, it crosses bridges, it does all sorts of things. But as with Adrian's slide, you can see quite a lot of the counties is outside of the coverage. So the big question for us is, if you're not going to deliver this over that straight sort of copper, where do you go next? Now, BT's mentioned their next generation access, fibre to the cabinet, fibre to the premises. And what I'm going to look at is an alternative solution. One of the interesting things you get when you get out into the rural areas is people always talk about GP surgeries, libraries, post offices being a nucleus for the community. We wish. I mean, most people who live out in the rural community will tell you there's nothing there. We've lost our libraries, we've lost our GPs. They've all been pulled back into the what we would call urban areas in the Cumbria context, which is probably rural by London standards, just south of Watford. But to us, you know, these are sort of very small market towns, and most things have gone back to them. One of the few things that is actually left in the rural areas is primary schools, because Cumbria County Council has been very far-sighted. It's accepted that it's important to educate young children, primary age range particularly, in their local communities. If you take that away, you've lost the heart of the community. So local schools are vitally important, and most of them are still there, despite all the pressures the budgets always impose. So if you look at those, and you can see it's quite a good smattering right across Cumbria. The bits over on the right there that are white that have got nothing there is because it's mountains, so that there aren't any people there really. But most of the places, right down to quite small communities, have schools. And those schools are already connected to the internet. The county council has spent a lot of money over the last, 10 years now, putting broadband links into them. A lot of them are on fibre connections, most of which are BT fibre, open reach fibre underneath. Some aren't. The ones who aren't on fibre are not on fibre because BT has quoted such exorbitant sums of money to put fibre to them that we thought they'd mistaken the national debt for a quote, and therefore the schools were not done. However, they have radio solutions. We've done a lot of other things. So, the schools are connected using radio in some places. But I have to say, it's a second-class technology, really. We can't get the bandwidths, we can't get the speeds that we actually need. We have two other assets, I suppose, through Cumbria. The purple line is the railway lines. The north-south one is the Settle to Carlisle line. Very scenic, and it actually does already have some fibre optic cable on it. It was put on by Network Rail as part of the Future Telecoms network for signalling. The east-west one is part of the bit at the top down to Wigan. I haven't bothered with the area outside of the constituency because, beyond there dwell dragons and we don't want to know about them. But the purple one across the top is the Carlisle to Newcastle, and the one to the left goes off to West Cumbria, to Workington and Whitehaven, and the southbound one. So if you look at that, it goes right through the middle of that area, which is very interesting because we can do in the green one is actually the schools network, and they actually have a fibre in the duct that runs up the A6, and that was again put in to service schools. So from the point of view of connecting communities, there's going to be a lot of talk about that later this afternoon, and it's not the subject to this particular session. But what I would say is that, contrary to some of the things we've heard so far, communities are very active. And a lot of communities are always saying, we want to do a rollout of broadband and we'd like to do NGA in our community. And the first thing they run into is the issue of, all right, fine, they can do something in their village, they can deploy wireless, they can deploy fibre, they can dig up fields, they can do lots of things, which you'll hear exciting stories about later, so I won't steal their thunder. The big problem they all run into is, contrary to what Bill said, is backhaul. If you want a high-speed pipe out of one of those small rural communities, you are talking 40,000 plus a year for 100 megabits in Cumbria. That's a typical sort of figure. And if you try and divvy that up amongst a few hundred houses, the economics don't look pretty attractive. How about we use the schools instead? We've already said most of those communities have a primary school in it. Most of those schools have fibre, or a good percentage of them have fibre. So how about Ed Vaizey said this morning, and Jeremy Hunt said it, we must use the public sector networks, we must use the National Education Network. So how about we use those schools, those primary schools, to provide the backhaul for those communities? And then how about we go a little bit further and we say things like, okay, I don't know who owns the railway beds. Is it public sector? What sort of strange hybrid beastie is Network Rail? I know not. But the point is, there is a railway bed down there, and it ought to be fairly easy to either run new fibre on it or use some of the Network Rail fibre. And then how about, in the first instance, the community uses the primary schools for their connectivity using existing links, and then later we dig out from things like the railway line or the green line that goes up the middle to those communities, and then we can service both the schools and the communities with fibre, which we can run at 10 megabits. Let's really go NGA. Let's not mess about here with the slow speeds. So we've got lots of communities along that railway line that we've been talking to who are very interested in doing things. One example of that, this is an area around Great Asby and Warcop, so that bit in the southern bit. You can see the green circles that show the existing 2 megabit coverages, and you'll see straight away they're outside of that coverage. We can also see there are some primary schools in there. There's two. There's one at Great Asby and one at Warcop, are both highlighted on that map. So how about, in the first instance, connecting the community through the school? So we'll put a cabinet in, some sort in, say, Great Asby. We connect that through the school back into the Clio network and out to the internet. And we share the costs of the link to the school. So the net effect of that is to pull the cost down to the school and make it affordable to the community. And then we bring into play fibre on the railway lines, and we dig the fibre out from there to the schools. And that dig might not be as long as you would think, because by the community digging out to properties, they will probably come quite a long way towards the railway line anyway. And this model can be extended up and down. We've identified about 26 parishes there, those are the ones on the right, that potentially could use schools in the first instance. And then we reverse the situation, use railway lines and things like that to actually get fibre in to serve both the school and the community. And the exciting thing is going to be that if we do something like that, there's a long-term investment. Fibre in the ground is going to be good for, well, a lot longer than I'm going to be on this planet, so I probably won't be worrying when it wears out. But it's got a lot of headroom on it, a lot of capacity. The next generation applications we're excited about, telemedicine, interactive, 3D, all the things that are going to gobble up bandwidth. I don't know what's going to be the killer app. It's not going to be anything I thought of. If I did know what it was, I wouldn't tell you because I'd be trying to paint it and make money. But whatever it is, it'll probably come as a surprise. So I'm one of those evangelists that believe that if we're going to put any money in, let's put in something that gives us a lot of headroom, that will cover us for all sorts of things that we haven't dreamt of yet, that we've done the job for the next 20, 25 years or whatever, and we're not just going to dibble around the edges and then come back in 3 years and say, terribly sorry, we need more money because we've got to do this again. Okay?
Well, thank you very much, Barry.